I'd like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called. Notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meeting Act. Time is 6:01 p.m. We ask that all in attendance conduct themselves respectfully at all times during this meeting. Any outbursts or disruptive behaviors may result in your removal from this evening's workshop. The following members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasson, Catherine Sells, Dr. Buddy Bonner, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, Sheila Taylor. I've asked Dr. Bonner if he would lead us in prayer.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for your presence and guidance tonight as the board begins to look at district goals for the following year. Lord, we know that your hand is on Lewisville schools and staff and students and community members and parents. Please make sure that we understand your desires and help us discern what's important for the district and how to guide the district moving forward. Please open our eyes to see and our ears to hear the discussions of each other to best discern the direction for Lewisville schools. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Amen. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance and Texas Pledge. We have no speakers this evening. As such, discussion items, Dr. Rapp, Superintendent, and District Goals.
Thank you, President Miller. So before we get started this evening, a couple of big thank yous go to leadership team, and specifically Dr. Shauna Miller, as she's been reporting to you all about the progress of the long-range plan. And that's going to be the foundation for what we talk about tonight as we talk about the board, superintendent, and district goals for the 23-24 school year. I also want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Fitzhugh for working with the leadership team on the scorecard. I'm excited to talk through that with you tonight as well, and just how all the pieces of the long-range plan are coming together in time for this conversation this evening. And of course, the long-range plan will be back before you on Monday night, the 17th, for adoption. In your packet, I want to talk you through a couple of things. So you have got a sheet with the cornerstones on it. Communications has been working on drafting an updated version. As you know, we had shared with you all a while back different versions of the cornerstones, and of course a little bit of the feedback was in those different versions they lost their look of cornerstones. So the cornerstone image is intact in this version. We kept, of course, all the 4 cornerstones the same, but you'll see in the center of the circle we've now put the names of all of our 5 feeder patterns in there. We've left the compass the same, just to focus on future ready. So after tonight, you can continue to give me feedback on just the visual nature of this information. You've got your beliefs, your mission, your vision, and then the 5 goals, and under the 5 goals for each cornerstone. And I'm trying to think, where did you have 2 for resource stewardship. I was like, I'm off by 1. Okay. Just a quick recap, of course, and I know we've been bringing this before you, but the committee that met in the fall really took your charge. You all worked on beliefs and mission and vision and really affirmed those things, talked about the wording, talked about what resonated with them. And so I'm just going to say these things out loud because I'm looking so forward to a new vision, mission, and beliefs being adopted on Monday night, the 17th. The vision is all students are confident, equipped with the knowledge and skills to thrive and adapt for their future. The new mission would be engaging and inspiring learners and leaders. And then our beliefs, students' needs are the center of our learning community. Education is the shared responsibility of students, staff, and community. High-quality staff are the heart of a culture of learning. A safe and nurturing environment is essential for a sense of well-being. Continuous improvement informs and inspires future growth. And finally, students are more than a test score. So, I hope as you see this all come together, it's just an exciting overview of where we all have been since the fall. So you've got the draft of the visual. Now if you'll flip that visual over to the back, the thing that we talked with you all about the other night, we're also really proud about and how this has come together. With your 5 goals that you have for the long-range plan, the staff came up with performance objectives for those 5 goals. And that's what you see on the back side of this. So basically, a one-pager is essentially all the things, the vision, mission, beliefs, and the performance objectives. And of course, the performance objectives drive the work of the organization. You all, in the longer document, see the strategies that we would be drafting that would come before you in the DIP to achieve these performance objectives. Specifically in year 1, you got a little bit of sense of year 2 and 3 as we know it right now. But when we think about the goals for the 23-24 school year, that really what we agree upon that will come out of the work tonight, and again, tonight's just our first stab at this conversation, will ultimately inform what goes into my section 1 of my evaluation instrument. So, nice one-pager there with your performance objectives with those goals. The other thing you have in your packet is our scorecard. So one of the things that we've talked about for a long time is keeping track of how we're doing as we implement a long-range plan. That also is a separate document. It's got a front and a back. So a one-pager scorecard is in your folder. And then you've got the longer document that is the draft of the long-range plan, the more lengthier document that's got the draft of the strategies to go with it. We're not going to focus on the conversation with strategies tonight. That's not really necessarily the goal there. But the scorecard is really your way to say, okay, with the goal 1 of student learning, as I look at your handy-dandy one-pager, it's got 2 performance objectives in goal 1, 1-1 and 1-2. So when you look at your scorecard, we've talked about, as a leadership team, how would we hold ourselves accountable for achieving those performance objectives. So 1-1 has 8 different indicators on your scorecard for how that performance objective would be measured. Then performance objective 1-2 has 7 different indicators. So there's 15 scorecard items in Cornerstone 1, Goal 1 of student learning. I do not anticipate that all 15 of those items you would want to put in Section 1 of the evaluation instrument, all right? So our goal tonight is to get your feedback for Goal 1, for instance. You're going to give us feedback on which one of these scorecard indicators that go with the performance objective are most important for us to hold accountable to in the superintendent evaluations and say that's the district superintendent goals. We will be working on all of these things with the long-range plan, but the feedback about what you want to specifically see in Section 1 of that evaluation document is the feedback that I'm interested in this evening. Then the same thing holds for Goal 2. So Goal 2, Cornerstone 2 is student experience. You see that you have 5 performance objectives there. So performance objective 2-1 on your scorecard has 3 different indicators. And so hopefully you get the flow of how your scorecard works. What we would do publicly after you all adopt the long-range plan is we'll put this scorecard on the internet, and we will start keeping track of how we are doing on hitting these targets with the scorecard. One other thing about the scorecard, and I'll just point you to 1.1.3, all right? That's the percent of students that are reading on level for 3rd grade as a measurement of performance objective 1-1. If that is one of the priorities that's going to be in Section 1 of my evaluation instrument, then we would come up with middle of the year targets. You see over to the side, current year actual BOY, MOY, and EOY. So my evaluation would be done prior to the EOY being completed, so we would then establish an MOY target that I would be responsible for hitting with the goals that are chosen for Section 1 of the evaluation instrument. So I'm going to pause there about all your materials management. If y'all will put up for me the performance objectives and the goals, that would be great. Thank you so much. So this is going to be the feedback that we get from you this evening, and I think we'll go just cornerstone by cornerstone. So we'll start with goal 1 and go around and get everybody's feedback about what is important for you to include in my evaluation instrument as our district superintendent goals from goal 1. But before we start that, just any questions about your materials that you have in front of you before we get to the feedback? Okay. Any questions on materials? Okay. All right. Then let's go. Goal 1, student learning.
Actually, I don't have anything for goal 1 other than to say, as Ms. Prosnick and I were discussing down here, Dr. Rapp, you had item 113 pointed out, and then 114 and 115. Those are state obligated.
Yes.
You want to speak to that?
Yes, those items are meeting a state obligation. We know that one of the things we looked at for this school year and on the CCMR was, and I actually brought forward modifications to the CCMR one, but those 3 are meeting a state obligation as well. Yeah.
So we're looking for additional beyond those 3, correct?
So yeah, so the reason that 1.1 has actually got 8 measures is we've incorporated the 3 that are required by the state, and then we came up with 5 additional measures, many of which are measuring what you all have already done work on our dashboard for. So we really tried to look at how do we take advantage of the dashboard elements. We've already determined what is going to tell us if students are ready or not, and so we're pulling those dashboard elements that we've already done work on and pulling them into here to report out on. So I guess, Dr. Bonner, I want to go back to, if you just want to start us off with, are there any of the 1.1s that you would want me to, you would want to offer?
Again, just those that are required by the state.
Is the ones you want to keep?
Yeah, the remainder of those pass to my colleagues.
All right, thank you. Ms. Prosnick, goal 1.
I have a couple of questions
Okay.
in the ones,
Okay.
which is the 2.7 GPA. Is that an all-inclusive GPA? Is that weighted? Is that unweighted? I have a lot of questions about what that qualifier is.
Okay.
And then on the warning system, I have, my concerns on that is that the baseline is not till 24, 25, because as a board, and I realize you were not our superintendent at the time, we talked about that in January of 2021 at the January 20th meeting. And so I'm a little surprised that we have to wait 2 years for that when the board asked for that. Actually, it was Ms. Hassett that asked for that at that meeting. So that's my feedback on number 1. I'm fine with keeping the 3
Okay.
highlighted,
Yep.
but I would like some qualifiers around those other points.
Okay. Real quickly, Dr. Fitzhugh, on the weighted or unweighted on their dashboard, do you want to provide clarification to what's on there for the GPA?
There we go. I was like, I thought the button worked. I believe that it is the weighted version. It's what we calculate in terms of their GPA that we send forward. So it's just the standard one that we use. So like honors classes have a little bit of a heavier weight than, when I say weighted, it pulls in the higher weight for those honor classes. This is derived from that work with the Redefining Ready group, that 2.7 was what research indicated. So that's what we pull for that one.
Yeah, good. And then the early warning dashboard, we did talk about baseline in year 1 or year 2. It is created and it is usable. Dr. Fitzhugh, just give a little bit of your and my conversation on, we would still have it, it's just collecting the baseline on the use of it.
We have it, and so we have several different indicators, like if you're not meeting a certain grade in science, if your attendance, it's what is our threshold that we want to establish for our targets? Like, is it that we want to have only 5% of our kids not meeting science, or do we need to come up with a collective, when you pull all of these together, what is that it means? Like, I need to figure out how to aggregate it all into one indicator to report out.
I guess my question on that is why we're waiting an extra year. I understand I completely understand getting the baseline data. It's just in the chart that you've provided, the baseline is not till 24-25 school year. That's where my slight frustration comes in, because if we've got it and it's usable, I don't understand the year out.
I think we were thinking the 23-24 school year gives us time to build capacity with campuses on looking at what's been put together, giving Dr. Fitzhugh time to study what do the campuses see, like in terms of the indicators we've collected, and then that's why at the end of that 23-24 school year, you would basically then have the data you need to establish the baseline as your target. So you're actually using it next school year, you're just not establishing a numeric target.
That's what I'm more concerned about. Thank you.
Ms. Sells.
Okay, thank you for clarifying on the three that are required ones. And I had the same question on the GPA and the early warning system, because I think that is key in intervention and making a difference in our students. I did have a question. Can you walk us through the teacher feedback of 111? How is that? I mean, how are you going to aggregate all that?
Well, so that really is one of the reasons why you're looking at the baseline for 23-24. So we've talked a lot with Ms. Gall about the long-range plan really indicating that we're measuring with curriculum, are we helping you be better at your work? Is it helping you as a teacher be more efficient and effective? So we've got to develop the instrument that will help us gather that feedback. So that's why your baseline year is 23-24, because they'll have to have time to develop the instrument, get the feedback, and then set those targets for 24-25.
And I think that's where my question comes in, is because I believe we need teacher feedback wholeheartedly. But I also know that you can make it really easy as me on a teacher, and student success isn't going to happen. So I think that we need to really be cautious and how we ask that from. I really wanted those questions to be more of are what we providing helping you to be a teacher that creates successful students? You know what I mean?
I do. And one of the things with this long-range plan, that we've talked about is it's a time to take stock of some of the things that we've been doing and determine how are we doing on those things. And as y'all know, we've been developing our own curriculum now since I was well before superintendent. So that's been, getting into learning and teaching over almost 20 years ago, I guess. But so we figure it's time to take a look at the system that we've had in place has been around for a while. And we also know that our teacher workforce is changing. And so, that the needs of the incoming teacher are different than the needs of teachers that are more on the end of their career. And we've tried hard to develop a curriculum that meets the needs of all of those teachers, but I appreciate Ms. Gall as she's really been working with the learning and teaching team on, it's just time to get some good solid feedback about that and ensuring we're meeting the needs of the new workforce and still meeting the needs of our veteran workforce.
So I agree with Dr. Bronner. I think that the 1.1 can just be the state obligated ones for now. I do like the idea of the teacher feedback, but I guess I'd rather, if it was going to be one of your goals, that it would not be a baseline year, Are we doing 1.2 right now too, or are we just? Oh, okay. So, that's a lot. That's 7 points in, the 1.2. So, I think we ought to whittle it down somehow, and as to determine which one that is, I'm not sure, because almost the first 4 kind of go together, I guess. I don't know. I guess I would love a suggestion if we don't want 7, which I don't want 7, which ones would we take off for your goals? Ms. Prostek, you look like you don't agree or have or something.
Well, no, the 3 are required by the state to be
No,
part
I'm
of her
talking about
evaluation.
1.2, the 1.2 goals.
Well, that's if
What
you
are you-
wanted, that's
what are
if
you
you wanted to
asking?
add something.
Are you asking to keep 1.1.2 trend target high yield strategy in there, or 1.1.1?
Okay, so, okay, we got too many points in here. Okay. So we have to keep 1.1.1.3 through 5, because they're state obligated, correct? Then if you go down to 1.2.1 through 7, are any of those state obligated? No. Okay, so that's what I'm saying, is that those 7 down there, I don't think we need to have 7 on your evaluation, but I'm not really sure how to pick which ones.
15 in section 1, so are you saying?
Well, because you want to keep some from each goal, right?
Well, not necessarily.
Maybe,
I mean, I think we need input on that.
I've got an idea.
Well,
So does
just
Ms.
just an
Hassett.
example. If we're already measuring CCMR overall chart, why would we keep something like college readiness, LISD senior?
Ms. Hassett, what's your idea?
I believe we need to hit all 3 levels, so I love the idea of 1.2.2 through 4, but I could be convinced to not do 3. The point 3.
I had a different idea.
To have one at middle school and then one as exiting seniors, just to have one indicator at every level.
Okay, so you're saying that, like, we would have the 3rd grade reading targets for elementary, then we would pull the readiness dashboard middle school, and then what for high school?
Probably 1.2.4 for the seniors.
Oh, okay.
Is a good start, I believe. I agreed with Mrs. Miller, Mr. Miller, so sorry. Earlier, college readiness was not something I thought we needed to do to 1.1.5, so rather than overwhelm with all of them, I was just trying to hit every level.
That makes sense. I like that.
So I may need a little more information on definition. I guess trend target, I'm not exactly sure what that is, so if you could.
Yes, so the
share
trend
that.
target, so we have a trend walkthrough instrument that we use to document what's taking trends and patterns of what's going on in classrooms. And so we would actually, as a part of this long-range plan, be revisiting what we're collecting on that trend walkthrough instrument, which is why you see it grayed out up until year 25, 26. So we would do the work to revise it and then collect new baseline data in 25, 26. So we would be then collecting data on those high-yield strategies that the long-range plan is saying that we want to see happening in classrooms, and revise the trend instrument accordingly.
I probably will align more with Ms. Haslett on, I feel like we have too many, but this is such, student learning, right, is the cornerstone of education. So I feel like there should be a lot just based on that. Clearly, I know we're required for the reading and the math and the CCMR, which is great because that's what we should be doing. My question may be more granular. Are we looking at averages for these scores? Or I guess I'll just say what my concern is. When we go through the test scores, I'm sorry, not test scores, when we go through the reading and math scores, we have different groups. So how will we be looking at expecting increases across those certain groups? And I'm thinking socioeconomic, minority, I think maybe special education. How does that fit into this plan?
So on the scorecard, those 1.1.3, 4, and 5 are all links. That data would continue to have targets by student group.
By group, okay.
Yes, but the overall long-range plan targets that we have to hit are the aggregate ones that you see there on the chart. So we're not going to stop collecting the student group data, and they will still have targets that we need to hit.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Okay, and then, like I said, I align more with, I do like the idea of collecting data and seeing where we are once you start with third grade, and then you get to middle school, and then you get to a higher level, because it seems like it gives you the ability to know if strategies are working and if there needs to be some intervention. And then my other question was early warning system? What that is exactly?
Yes. So, and that's, ultimately to what Ms. Prosnick was asking. One of the things we started building, and Dr. Fitzhughes led this effort, and I appreciate it, we started building an early warning dashboard to help the campuses identify students that might be at risk for dropping out.
Okay.
So it's really that proactive approach of saying, if you are possibly failing multiple classes, let's say, and that's an indicator you're watching, then the campus can provide intervention to that based on that dashboard.
Et cetera. So I definitely want to keep that one. So I wasn't helpful in helping to get rid of anything, because, like I said, I think this is one of the most important things on the scorecard around student learning.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and one of the good things is, y'all, the scorecard that you see, ultimately, the whole thing will be intact as we look at implementing the long-range plan. So you're choosing tonight, or giving feedback tonight. You don't have to make the choice tonight. You're just giving feedback about the little subset that's going to be what's included in Section 1 of the evaluation instrument that you all will hold me accountable for. But this whole scorecard, the way it is right now, the idea is we would be reporting out on progress on that, because it's our accountability for the long-range plan.
Okay, I think what you just said is really important. We're going to be reporting out on this as it relates to goals that we measure you on. I do think we should, in section 1.1.x, just stick with the state standards. I'm okay if you throw a, teacher thing in there. Absolutely opposed to anything that measures you on GPA. I think it's, we've spent a ton of time on getting away from GPA chasing in the district. A 2.7 weighted GPA is meaningless. In fact, when we looked at what universities were looking for, we found that often it wasn't always GPA.
The 2.7.
What? It's not. It's not. The information that was shared with us was that it was not a primary function. So we intentionally, that's why we did some of the things with middle school, is why we intentionally moved away from GPA chasing, so that we were getting credit, giving credit for middle school classes and high school, et cetera. I would just say, as it relates to a superintendent goal, it should not be a measure. I do believe it's good to track it. I would say, though, it's irrelevant to almost everybody sitting in this room what their GPA was in high school. And so it's forgotten quickly, as is, right? As is chords, by the way, to bring up another subject. People don't remember how many chords you had. But at any rate, maybe we should have that in the document. I like consolidating the, Christie's point, consolidating, doing an elementary, middle, and high school. I do think that's some type of measure. I do think, to Sheila's point, we created on third grade reading, for example, or 6 months of progress. The state doesn't measure the or 6 months of progress, right?
We do. We establish our own way.
Right. So if this is percent reading on grade level, third grade, that's a state requirement.
Yes, it's a requirement that we create targets for it, but we set the determining how we're going to get those targets. So that's iStation data and looking at our students served by special education, then meeting their IEP goals. So that isn't the state STAR test.
So I think as it relates to a goal, for superintendent goal, we should make sure that we have or 6 months of progress.
Yeah, Dr. Fitzhugh, on y'all's third, your math and reading, you want to just clarify how we come up with that data.
So right now, the way it's currently written, it's on grade level. We took out the on progress because we felt that's what the statute required.
Okay.
We have discussed going back and looking to see if we felt like we could work progress in. I think that's something that Ms. Gall and I can look at to see and circle back if that's something the board would like us to investigate.
And I think that there's a danger here in decomposing this goal as it relates to the superintendent goal. If you decompose this goal by a sub-pop, you may get the wrong behaviors. If you don't decompose it by sub-pop, you may not address the behaviors that are what we do. Right. We have to, it gets reported based on sub-pop. The question is, as it relates to a goal, are you going to put a bunch of goals in place that show a goal by sub-pop?
Not on the scorecard here. So if they click on the link, we will still have targets that we're monitoring that we expect our student groups to hit. But as far as if 1.1.3 is in the superintendent evaluation, the targets that we're expecting are what we see here.
At an aggregate level,
At an aggregate level.
not at a sub-pop level.
Right, but we will still be monitoring student group performance and reporting out on that student group performance, just like we do right now.
Right, reporting on it. Okay.
Well,
And-
I'm sorry. I'm thinking 2 or 3 months in advance when a small subcommittee is going to come together and actually draft the document. And I would recommend to whoever's in that group that 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5 are reported out on the document itself by subpopulation.
The chart will automatically say whether we are.
Right.
The biggest piece of feedback there is going to be setting those middle of year targets by all those, in order to have that done, so y'all can know, because you'll have to look at, did I hit a middle of year target instead of an end of year target? But all that data would be put together by student group, and then y'all can decide how you want to use it.
Dr. Rapp, can I also just say that the way that the evaluation instrument is written, it's how many of the student groups hit their targets. So do 5 out of 6 hit, do 6 out of 6 hit? That's what the final evaluation in the superintendent evaluation is written as. So that would be included in some way. It's just hard to embed that chart on this one-page report here.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And then on 1.2.1 through 4, just what does the word readiness mean there?
That is all coming from y'all, from the board dashboard that we created on readiness indicators. So we did all of that homework all those many years ago about what are the different indicators that we need to be monitoring to determine if students have academic readiness, workforce readiness, college readiness. And so that readiness is coming from our elementary indicators in the aggregate from our board dashboard.
Okay, so if we were to consolidate that elementary, middle, and high, would it be inclusive of the other items that we would take out, 1.2.5, we would consolidate 1.2.3 and 4, we'd remove 1.2.6 and 1.2.7. Would readiness for ES, middle, and high be inclusive of those elements that we need, based on the history you just gave?
It would not be inclusive necessarily of 1.1, 3, 4, and 5, because there's other indicators feeding into readiness.
I'm in 1.2.
Right. 1.2 is not inclusive of 3, 4, and 5.
So it's not inclusive of reading, math?
It is inclusive of reading, but different than how we're reporting on it in 1.3. Yeah. So it's 2 different ways to look at it.
But if you just say that you have 3 items in 1.2, and then you have the 3 items in 1.1, let's say 1.1.3, 1.1.4, 1.1.5, and then 3 1.2s, you would essentially then capture all of the readiness necessary to assess student performance?
Ultimately, if you all want to include anything beyond the state required ones, which are 3, 4, and 5, then the feedback would have to be, okay, is it because you want to include a middle school one, and a high school one from your readiness dashboard. And that's, I think, the conversation that I'm kind of hearing tonight is to consider moving forward. One that incorporates all the different, be sure you have all the different levels covered. And, you know, you're getting, so if you have third grade, you may not want to do the readiness dashboard elementary, but you might want to do the middle school dashboard and the 9 through 11 dashboard. Yeah.
Oh, so here's what I'm confused by. This is, one is looking at this as a reporting tool. The other is using it as a superintendent goal tool. So what I'm...
It's a subset. So basically, this scorecard is a way to measure the whole entire long-range plan, and the feedback from tonight will inform what's brought forward for the subset of what's included for the superintendent evaluation goals.
Got it. That's where I'm
It's a
trying to get to.
subset.
That's what I'm trying to get
We're
to.
not going to keep all 15 of these things for student learning. So based on tonight, it sounds like the majority of the feedbacks, be sure you have an elementary, a middle, and a high. And again, you don't have to land the plane on this tonight. It's just about looking at it, giving feedback, right? So you don't want anything, of course, it's a baseline year, which we wouldn't want to do anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments in section 1 on student learning? Okay, then goal 2, student experience. Start in the same pattern? Okay.
I will just put on the record tonight, it's a shame some of these aren't required. It would make it much simpler. I like both of them under 2.3 because if you're not in school, you cannot learn. Those are the attendance and the truancy items. Mr. Kosh and his group have done a great job making that a focal point this year with the purchase of our attendance software, and I'd like to see that train keep rolling. And then the other one I would throw in while I've got the mic open is all of those under 2.4 on school safety. So no comment there, just attendance and safety are my favorites.
Well, I completely agree with Dr. Bonner on 2.3, especially 2.31. I think that if you're not there, you can't learn. All in on that. The one that I would like to see, even though it says baseline on it, which I once again struggle with because once again back in January of 2021, the board asked for it, and that is 2.23 club and extracurricular, and I personally think it should be a 100% goal. I asked for it back in 2021 as well because we control that. And as a board, we could make it a local requirement for graduation, but every study and everything that I've read says that if a kid feels connected to their school, they do better with attendance, with grades, and with everything else. I guess my only question instead of club is I would say an extracurricular because I think our kids that are for example, in band, in football, or any of those theater, any of those activities, I think that counts, especially if they're in it all year. Not for a semester, but all year. I think that's my opinion on that. So, short and sweet. I did my homework, and I only came up with 7 things to add, so, ha, ha, ha.
A quick comment on the student club participation. I think the only reason it says baseline is that we would start collecting that data next year.
So why aren't we, once again, this is where I get frustrated.
Yeah.
Because we've asked for this data to be collected since January of 2021. I give grace that you were not our superintendent then,
Yes.
but that was the will of the board in 2021. So it's frustrating, I'm going to continue to use that word, that 2 years later, you're like, well, we've got to collect it. I don't understand why we haven't been. I think with Skyward, it would be very easy to collect this
So
data.
one of the things we already did build into collect, and I'll let Dr. Fitz speak about that, is anything that the kids are in for a course, we already have that. And we definitely agree that this would be a goal tentatively, I would say, you would see us come back on the scorecard and say 24, 25, 26, you're building towards 100% by the time your 3 years is up, okay? Our goal should be 100% of our students. What we've talked about is that we don't want to just attach it to course enrollment, because we know that kids are in clubs where they're not in courses. And what we have learned from trying to do what's been asked previously is that it's not easy for student sponsors to submit that data on behalf of kids. So from learning from that experience and trying to collect the data, what we think we can have the students do is them report out. So now that we have Qualtrics and we're seeing how easy it is to build things for kids to complete, that we collect that club information and are you in something directly from the students, that we're making it too complicated by trying to put it on the sponsors and vet and that kind of thing. So that's learning from the previous iterations of this, and I'll let Dr. Fitchie talk about what we know from the course enrollment perspective.
Well, I was going to say, we had a system, and we did report, but it was heavy with the sponsors, and I think we believe we reported it in 18 and 19. But when COVID hit, we took that off of the sponsors' plates to report, and that's why I don't have a baseline right now, because we have not put that back in to have sponsors reporting. With Qualtrics, we do have a way to do that. We had limited it back down to course enrollment, as Dr. Rapp said, and we're finding that a lot of our students do engage in co-curricular sports, band, those things that are associated with the class, but we know we can go bigger with that. So we just need the time to baseline it to see what do we have outside of our courses going on as we start to gather that. Again, we figured out a way in Qualtrics. We tested it this year. Did it work? And it works. And so we've never gathered this information of our middle school students either. So I think this allows us with the different pieces to broaden and get more information to see where we're starting and where we want to go. And I understand your target is 100%, and we're discussing through how do we get there and what do the steps look like. Because as you've said before, we don't want to put a kid in a club just to say they're in a club. We want the benefit of them being engaged in the club. So we want to set a practical target that doesn't just have us putting kids in underwater basket weaving because they need to be in a club.
But maybe they'll discover that they love underwater basketball.
They could. It is quite possible, but we're trying to make sure that what we're doing meets the intent of the clubs.
And appreciate that all of the conversations we've had when Dr. Rogers was here really led us to a different place on we can probably collect this in a lot different, easier way and not make it be so slow. Yeah.
I also agree with Ms. Lassonde that I don't want to make part of your superintendent goal a baseline year. But what I will say is this is a mountain for me that I will die on. So I definitely want it to be part of the conversation going forward. But I don't think it needs to be part of your evaluation, except I will take, everybody hold your hats, I will take a check the box that baseline data was collected, okay?
Thank you. And I agree that this one's critical, which is why we felt like it should be on the scorecard. Students need to be involved in order to be engaged. So completely concur on that.
Well, I agree with my colleagues on the truancy and attendance rates. I think that, once again, can't teach what you don't have the opportunity to teach, and they have to be in those seats. And then safety also. Is there a way, though, to combine safety into one and not, I mean, I know that those are different, but it just seems like we're getting out into the minute details, and I think that overall we would be just looking at a overall safety factor, not just pulling out all the little subsets of those. I do agree with Ms. Prosnick. We've had this conversation a lot, and I've had this conversation with students that tell me that their success was based on becoming involved in something that they really didn't think that they would ever become involved in. But I also know from my own kids' experiences that there's things that they tried that if it was up to them to report, they probably would say, oh yeah, I do that. But the fact is that they went to the first meeting and never again. And so I think that we really have to be careful when we're relying on our students to, and I love making them have ownership of that. I really do. But I also want to make sure that we understand that these are still our wonderful students whose brains have not fully developed. I don't know how to put it any nicer. Do you know what I mean? Because my kids would tell you that, yeah, they ate all their vegetables and had $2,000 in the bank, but I could tell you that was all different, you know? So that's just where I fall on that. I just have a hard time. And if we're going to require that at some point in time, first of all, I think that we really need to do a really better job of making ourselves even aware of what all is available. And also, we really need to look at the cost of what those things are. And so I don't think that this is just an easy, this is what we're going to require, because I think that there are so many things that factor into a kid. I mean, my mentee, she might be able to do something on school if she's not in detention sometimes, but after school, she's working to help pay the car payment. So she's going to be one of those that's not probably in that population by no choice of her own. So I struggle with that. I want everybody to be involved. I know that it's a key to their success, but I also know I don't walk their shoes. So that's all I have to say on that one.
Thanks, Catherine. Allison?
Okay. So, just looking through this, there's a lot of them here. In my mind, I'm trying to cull it down to, 4 or 5. So the ones that, and then again, part of me doing that is culling down ones that aren't baseline year. So that kind of leaves a fewer number to choose from. So I think the ones that I like 2.2.1, student comfortable talking with staff, and I guess that's a survey, right? I like that one. And then as far as on the 2.3. 1 and 2, I like both of them, but I think the one that I think we should use is the one about the truancy. And the reason why is Lori Rapp can't make students come to school. And so if they don't come to school, that might not be, completely on you. Yes, we can do things to encourage it and all that stuff, but at least with the student truancy, yeah, students aren't coming to school, right? But we are actively working on this new program to decrease truancy. I don't know. That's just my opinion. And then on the safety stuff, I am on that committee, and I'm all about everything safety. However, as you can see from the numbers here, the 100%, this would be a gimme goal for you, because I think that our staff and the Safety and Security Committee staff does an excellent job of making sure that they always do these drills and trainings and stuff. So, I think I heard Mr. Garrett say they maybe missed one drill at one school last year or something. I don't know. So that's, well, I know. Yeah, so, and maybe I made that up in my head. I don't know. So that's why I'm not picking one of those. So then I do like the one of the student survey environment. I feel like that's something that we can, staff can help, do better. Because again, this is a student experience cornerstone that we're talking about. I wouldn't mind also doing one of these restorative practice goals, or maybe two of them. So have all campuses had restorative practice training?
So we're at 98.6 on the initial, so by the end of next school year, we'll be at 100%. We just have one middle school that needs the initial training, and then from there, everybody moves over to refresher training.
Right,
So, yeah.
okay. So maybe we do, I don't know. So how, I think that would be a good one to do. And then tell me exactly, because I read a little bit here about the staff survey, the AP and counselor time to meet with students. I mean, because I know we're trying to get a touch point of every counselor meets with each kid 2 times a year is the goal, right?
Yes. So basically, because one of our goals is to really work on streamlining, reducing, and ensuring that our staff, both counselors and APs, are having increased time to meet with kids, which should be the benefit of looking at their workload and doing a better job as an organization of helping them with that. We got to have time to take care of the workload things that are creating some barriers to them meeting with time. So that's why next year is a baseline year on have we made any changes in that, and then what would be our targets for that moving forward.
Well, I like that one. However, again, it's a baseline one, so I'm not real sure that that's, so I guess my 3, are the 2.2.1, 2.3.2, and 2.5.1. And then I would defer to board members, whoever, to add a couple more.
Would you describe the last one, 2.5.6? What is that one a little bit more?
Okay, so this comes from out of the student services audit that was conducted. Our next step, one of the things we said we were going to do is make a district discipline committee, and Mr. Kosh has been already working to get that started. So we would provide a report on the discipline committee recommendations. And the reason we're calling next year a baseline year is we've really got to gather what would that report look like, and is it quantitative in nature? That's a little bit where we're kind of going to have to determine what that data indicator is, but basically how are we meeting the things that discipline committee is recommending? Is it maybe the discipline committee recommends 10 things, so our target the following year is 7 out of those 10, or something along those lines? But that is a direct result from the student services audit and what we wanted to do to implement a district discipline committee.
So it's a baseline year and the report year, so you don't need 1 year for reporting and 1 year for baseline? It all can be done in the 1 year?
We think so, based on our initial conversations. I mean, definitely if it looks like next year it's not possible to accomplish both, I will definitely say, this is a report only, and baseline moves to the following year. But our goal was to establish both.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Appreciate that explanation. I actually like the attendance. While I definitely concur with Ms. Lasan that we actually can't kidnap the little munchkins and make them come to school. That'd be not a good idea. But I think it's always a good indicator. It also helps prove that they also have a trusted adult. They have good relationships if they're coming to school more, in theory. But I do like the 2.5, 0.3, 0.4, and 0.6. I know it's a baseline year, but I just think it's a really important thing to at least consider based on the student services audit. So attendance, restorative practices, and 2.5.6. I get that it's a baseline year. And maybe we don't put it on, because I don't know how you would measure it. I just feel that's very, very important. I think the other one, the staff survey, is also very, very important. We've talked about that for a while, but it's a baseline. So maybe no baselines, but it's really important.
I feel like everything I want to talk about has already been covered, but I agree with the keeping the measures for attendance and school safety. I do like the club participation, but I probably fall between Ms. Prosnick, who I don't want to die on a hill, but I fall between her and Ms. Sells, because I think that's a great idea, but knowing the makeup of, we have over a third of our district at the poverty level. What does that look like if we're requiring? So maybe we can't have 100% as the indicator and have it be realistic, but maybe it's another number. But I do agree with you, that will keep them more engaged. I definitely would support keeping the measurements on the restorative practice training. Sounds like once we get that last campus together, we move to just the refresher anyway, so we would lose one of those, which is probably a good thing. I do like the discipline committee, just based upon the recommendations from the audit. It's also not lost on me from a, I guess, PR perspective, kind of where we landed in this area, around discipline and restorative practices, that I think it would be good to put the focus there for now on those items. And then, did I have anything else? I think I was okay with that. I actually thought I liked the survey, obviously, because if we're talking about experience, we want to know what experiences the students are having. I also liked the one that said student experience via parents, because I felt like that was a great way to get parents involved as well regarding the environment, what their students are experiencing, et cetera. So I would say I would like to keep both pieces of the survey, students and parents.
Okay, excellent comments. I'm going to add some more. First of all, I'd say, just from a semantics perspective, a third of the district is socioeconomically disadvantaged, not at the poverty level. They're two different things.
Sorry.
It's just
they need money or resources.
Well, we all need money, but
but you know
you're
what I
right.
mean.
They're classified based on, it's just not a poverty level. That's the only difference. However, I think Catherine makes an interesting point to Jenny's point. I actually am less patient about the fact that we are at a baseline level when we have had campus improvement plans and a district improvement plan around being involved in clubs. Honestly, it's disappointing to hear that we're at a baseline, that we can't even tell where we're at. I get that we may have said to certain people to stop reporting it, but we've talked about this before 2021, because a lot of us learned about this stuff at NSBA back in 2015-16. And so I'm a little bit flummoxed as to why we would not have something a little more like use this year as your baseline and then improve from there. Now, then it gets into the Dr. Fitzhugh's point, how do you track that? You don't want somebody in, and I think Ms. Prosnick makes a great point. It could be a sport, it could be, you can't do 3 sports like your daughter does and a club at lunch. I mean, it may just be too much. Maybe you just need that time for study hall. But there has to be something. And I think we all know the dynamics around how much this means from a participation perspective. By the way, it means the same thing for employees. If an employee is involved in something at work, they're a much more engaged employee than just doing their work. So I think that's one where, as you guys put goals together, I would focus on that. Students comfortable talking to staff, that's an interesting one. The question is, what's the right number? Some kids just aren't going to talk to somebody that's not their parent or their aunt and uncle, whatever. So how do you know what the right number is? I guess, it's something to think about. I would not have anything that you said percent positive respondent student survey environment, anything like that, and I'll tell you why. These numbers, while we want them to be positive, they can be manipulated. I'll give you an example. We have a thing at work called You Matter with Mike. It's a survey that comes out once a week. Depending on where you go around the world, when it's time to do that survey, there's a cart that comes around, and it's got the favorite snack of that country, Costa Rica, Bogota, etc. Why are they doing that? Hey, it's a reminder to do the survey. You're basically artificially stimulating people to do the survey, and they get a little bit of a treat with it so that you tend to see a positive response in those. So I would say, unless you have somebody build a taxonomy around how you're doing these surveys, which probably is not an expertise we have in-house, you would need to then look at whether that's, you're going to measure the percent of respondents, positive respondents, or, because the other thing is, you're never going to get 100%, and you really don't want to get 100%. It's just not possible.
On, the student survey pieces that you all see on here, both survey and parent, that's one thing that we have been building towards and doing for a while. So we were able to actually, Dr. Fitzhugh was, I say we, she looked at the data, so I'll give her credit for that. Because we have quite a bit of historical data now from surveying our students at all these different levels, that's really where those targets come from. So we already know how our students have been responding to the survey. Our staff is used to administering the survey to students. We don't see any principals at this time, treats with Baker in order to raise these percentages at Lewisville High School, for instance, although maybe if he's watching, he might consider that now, considering what you shared about, with Mike. But this is very well-informed data from all the surveys that we've been doing for both parents and kids. The other thing I would say on the baseline, and just I will reiterate on club participation, I'm absolutely happy to put in this year what we know from from course enrollments, because I don't want to underscore that we did build the system, we did do it based on course enrollment. It'd be high school only, but we could put an asterisk with that. COVID definitely impacted some progress on that goal, and I would be remiss if I didn't restate what Dr. Fitzhugh said about that. But I mean, Dr. Fitzhugh, I think we could easily put for 22-23 what the dashboard already tells us about club participation, and then build from there. Yeah.
So did we take it out of the campus improvement plans or the DIP?
No, we still have goals on having kids engaged through, I can't remember exactly what our DIP reports on every time right now with that. But we absolutely believe that not only is that goal important, it was so important to keep it a part of this long-range plan. And our commitment to you all is we want to ensure that COVID, while it interrupted it, doesn't stop that from being a priority for us. So, it's probably, this is good conversation for us to have, and y'all be able to ask these questions, and I'll be happy to put a number there from this year on that baseline.
Thank you. And I think that, campus improvement plans were also a part of community engagement. In other words, we wanted people to look at a campus improvement plan or the campus, what's the little booklets you had made by campus profiles, that these would kind of work in conjunction with each other. So you say this campus had low star scores and they're ranked D by the state, but if you look at our campus improvement program and your campus profile, this is really a better definition of what that campus looks like. And so then we can't turn around and say, well, one of the key elements in it, we're not really tracking for efficacy. And I get to where we're at and why we had to back off it. So I'm just saying, this is one that I think, I hope principals understand the importance of it at all levels. Let me go on. So I think that the training stuff, you got to do it. It needs to be 100%, and so I wouldn't put it in as anybody's goal. And anything that's absolutely stipulated or makes common sense, meaning you do 100% of your drills, I don't think should be a measurement goal. I'd be interested at the next meeting in executive session of why that 2.5.3 is 98.6 and not 100. I mean,
We just have one middle school that this year, with the change in principal, they didn't do the initial. They're going to do it next year, and that's all that's left for the restorative practice training.
Yeah, so it's always interesting when there's a change of leadership is a reason we don't meet a goal.
We and definitely appreciate that. I would say, this is the first time you've all ever seen a scorecard approach with what we've been doing. So again, there's no doubt that, and I appreciate Matthew Morris's this work this year on restorative practices, because COVID definitely interrupted some of the training there. But through the work this school year, actually, have everybody at a 98.6, and all we lack is 1. So maybe I'm just looking at it from a different perspective, but with his work this year, we're back up to 98.6% of the campuses having that initial, and we just lack the 1 for next school year.
Okay, I understand the reasoning. I think you want it to be 100% as well. Yes, I do. So as it relates to refreshers, I think those goals are way too low, in my opinion. As it relates to 2.5.5, I'm a little bit confused on this being a baseline. So a number of years back, I think everybody besides Dr. Bonner and Ms. Taylor were on the board, we allocated a substantial amount of money to add counselors at the high school level for this very reason, so that we could have academic counselors spending more time with kids on academics, and we could have other types of counselors available for students based on other types of needs. And now we're looking at a baseline next year. It seems to me that given we've had those in place for 3 to 4 years, we would have a baseline.
Okay, so let me provide additional clarification. As Manya Crow reported in her program evaluation, we already know the data on the counselor touch points with students. This one is different from that. So what this one's about, Mr. Miller, is specifically that the long-range plan asks us to look at the work. One of the things we've heard about is the paperwork burden for different programs and things impacting the time that our assistant principals and counselors are able to meet. So that's us working to increase efficiency for them, and as we increase efficiency, their time to meet with students should go up, and this is now APs and counselors, not just counselors.
I notice it's APs. What kind of caught me off guard is that what was used as a rationale to spend, I think, almost $1 million on additional high school counselors was the amount of time administrative time that went into the work that they were spending on academic issues when you had a span of 1 counselor to 500 students or whatever. Then we added these other counselors. Now we're talking about establishing a baseline. Now, what you've thrown in is the AP. Let's say if you take the AP out. Right.
We have the baseline.
Just the counselors? Okay, that'd be interesting to see.
Manya reported out on that.
Were they separate, though, academic counseling and non-academic counseling?
I'll go back and look at that touch point slide.
And then I would say, is there a way that parents can see, do we track that in Skyward or some other system where they see that their student met with their academic counselor or another counselor?
Yes, they have to log in that data as they meet with counselors.
So it is tracked, okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's all I had. Anybody else? You two sure you don't have anything?
All right,
Okay,
resource
next. Go ahead,
stewardship.
Matt, buddy.
I would project that if we don't do 311, 312, and 313 on the finances as strategic measures for Cornerstone 3, maybe the rest of our conversation is moot. Right, Ms. Maloney? Yeah. I've kind of made it my reason to be the last few meetings, and I project that it may be my reason to be the rest of the time I have the opportunity to serve this board, to talk about budget and finance. And I really like Ms. Taylor staying down there on the other end so I can look at her when I'm saying that, because I think we're kindred spirits, Ms. Taylor. So, thank you.
I'm going to hijack for just a moment and remind everybody that we got an email from Dr. Bonner to choose 5 or 7, not choose everything. So I would ask my fellow board members to be intentional in their recommendations. So mine is 3.4, because time is the only non-renewable resource on this planet. And if I can take things off the plate, I would be grateful. My once again, my frustration here is it just says one adjust, two adjust, not applicable. There's not a metric there. So once again, a goal without a metric is a wish.
Jenny, I get what you're saying about the 5 to 7. Are you
The
saying
5 to 7,
that's-
5 to 7 was for the whole thing.
Right, yeah.
So I chose 5 to 7 that I wanted to bring
so-
to the table to be part of the superintendent evaluation. If we do all of these things, that superintendent evaluation, Lori's going to end up with like 25 goals, and that is just not obtainable. I thought we were trying to stick to around 10 and include those first 3 that are state required. So, I mean, that was my interpretation of Dr. Bonner's email, and that was also how I prepared for tonight, because I read through everything, and I had some questions about some things I didn't understand, but I just I'd like to get home before Wednesday.
Well, I think Dr. Rapp is actually consolidating what she thinks are the aggregate priorities.
Right.
That'll
But
have to be
everybody
filled
should just.
down.
My point was.
I
not-
get
not-
it. Think to Dr. Bonner's point, though, buddy, were you talking about those 3 notwithstanding, those are included in your 5 to 7?
My intention was to limit the conversation as much as possible so that we don't give Lori 37 things to do of the 59. I did not adhere to 5 to 7 initially, but Ms. Prosnick and I have been having side conversations, and I've narrowed it down substantially. So, noted.
So Jenny, you're saying 3.4.1. I didn't get what yours was, buddy. You said financial priorities, but
311 through 313.
311 through 313. Okay, got it. You did say that. All right, Catherine.
Well, 311 through 313, I think those could be condensed, though. And I'm not so sure about the fund balance meeting the board. We also, as the board, control where we're going to set the budget. So I'm not sure making that Lori's goal, because it is the control is in with us. We could say that's your control, and then we can approve a $30 million deficit budget, and we're going to pull that $30 million, and that's not you. That's not on you. So I think that there needs to be some different alignment there as far as your responsibility as it comes to actions that are taken by us, if that makes sense. But absolutely, we need those stability indicators to let us know where our moves are. I mean, we rely on the information you give us, and so I think in my thinking of 311 through 313 is how can you better provide us the information that we need to make decisions that are sound and just and true as far as the budget. Does it make, that's my, I do agree with the streamline the district initiatives, but I also think that can be, yeah. And so that, I do agree. Oh my goodness, when I first came on the board, I think Dr. Rogers' superintendent evaluation for us as board members was about 14 pages. 19 goals. And let me tell you, it was way too many. And so, yes, I am for, let's bring all these things in, and let's really focus on the financial health, the student success health around the cornerstones. And although all these things have a part, I think that there's ones that have a higher weight. And so I think that's where I fall on 3. And did we go into 4? Is there just not a little gizmo, a little divider?
Yeah, all the resource stewardship is all
it's
one
all
big
one.
category on your scorecard, so all of those things encompass goal 3 and goal 4. which are all resource stewardship. Yeah.
I never got what my metrics were going to be for 3.4.
Yes, in fact, I was going to ask Dr. Miller on 3.41, the Streamlined District Initiative. So this was an interesting conversation. I'll ask her to add to it. Since we've not established a way to conduct a metric on how you're reducing and what's the right amount of reduction. So we all agree that this long-range plan should not do what TEA does, which is add more to people's plates. So the fact that it has a scorecard goal around we're going to streamline, I mean, that is progress. But we did struggle with, so we put 1 adjusted, 2 adjusted. It could be that we get into this and we are able to adjust 5 and 10, you know, so I'll let Shauna add on to that conversation.
So we're compiling a list of all the initiatives or things that are required of people to do, and it is long. And so as we do that, that list isn't even complete. So we can't say out of 50 things, we're going to eliminate 5 this year, you know. So we really want to take next year to kind of compile it all, see who's all being hit, and what the long-range plan is really going to help us see 3 years out, because we've never seen 3 years out to plan like that. And then the goal is, okay, we're making one big adjustment based on these things for this next year. We might be able to then say, oh, we now know what we can do and we can report out differently, but we were nervous to say, we're going to decrease by 10 because is that really how we're going to measure what we're doing, you know? So that, it was a hard way. So we thought, we know we're going to adjust somewhere to do something. Let's look at it all and analyze it and decide where.
We're open to the feedback for sure and appreciate the conversation around it.
Well, I'm going to go back to, once again, why do we have another year for baseline if we know what all of our initiatives and so forth have been to this point? I mean, I don't think we need another year of adding to a list. If we don't know what that list is, I think we have a bigger problem if we don't know what all of our initiatives and everything have been. So, you know, I try not to put more on your plate, because I chose this for a very specific reason. But if you wait another year, there's some people down in Austin ready to put more on that list. So I'd rather kind of start on that list instead of talking about that list. I agree, I'm not looking for an arbitrary number of reducing by 10, but this is also what I know. This is the long-range plan. We are not chiseling this in stone and standing on the mountain with it. We are putting it down, and we are, it's season, we're putting it down, and we are able to adjust it as a board along the way. So I don't look at this as gospel. I look at this is our plan, but our plan adjusts. So, you know, if one adjustment's what you want to put in there, but I don't know what one adjustment is. Is it one program? Is it, I need some better metrics there, and I understand that you all don't necessarily know what those metrics are, but this is important to me. This is mine. This is the one that I chose because I feel that what it will do is, I think it can affect our efficiency. So I would encourage you to not take a baseline year. I would encourage you to come up with an arbitrary number. Don't hit it. That's fine, but tell us why. Does that make sense?
Ms. Prosnick, can I just add into there, though? On top of that, I think that, sorry, I'm coming from behind. So we're not going to baseline. We do know that we want to make adjustments. We're starting with one. This could be one that it comes out as more of a qualitative report on top of. This is what we've identified. These are the adjustments we've made. Here's how it's impacting staff based on additional feedback. I think it's a little more involved than just a one number report. So my little cell here didn't give us enough space to put that. So one adjustment is how we're discussing it, but we know that there's more in terms of reporting out how that impacts and what that adjustment is that will go into the reporting.
I like the idea of qualitative, Dr. Fitzhugh, and maybe also, and I'm just spitballing here, maybe we could think about major versus minor or ranking them somehow. I'm not trying to make your life exceedingly more difficult. And then if we stick with a quantitative measure as a report, maybe we could do a range between 1 and 3 or 4 and 5 or not less than or at least or something along those lines to kind of give some flexibility to it, to Ms. Prosnick's point.
I definitely agree that the long-range plan it's got to mold and be moldable and adaptable. One of the things I would add, too, is while, yes, one of the first things, Shauna started doing in her role was collecting all the different things the departments are doing, all of those initiatives were started for a reason. And as we talked about at the budget workshop, even recently, there's work to be done with you all as a board. Some of those things that we've done, of course, come with cost. And some of them come with low enrollments, and some of them come with other things. And so this summer, in pulling together a board committee to look at, sometimes initiatives they involve the people out there that are doing the work. And nobody's doing something because they don't think it's going to make a difference for kids. So I think it's not immediately identifiable right from the start. I'm going to immediately stop doing X without, I think, some more collaborative conversation with all the people involved. But appreciate the feedback on that metric, and I look forward to making some progress there. So thank you.
Allison?
I actually agree with, and I was thinking the same thing about the first 2 goals, or the first 2 measures there, with what Ms. Sells said. I feel like the policy that we have for fund balance, I feel like that may or may not change in the next year, so I don't really want to include that. And then the budget balance, to Dr. Bonner's point, heck yeah, I hope that we can, but, I'm not sure that we will. So I feel like we're in such a flux right now that those 2, I don't like those 2. I do like the third one, 313. I like that one. I think that's probably a good one to keep. And then looking at the rest of them, there's nothing that just stands out at me. At first I was going to suggest the logging in on district devices, but then again, and it looks like it's been increasing, a little bit each year. But again, I mean, we can do things to try to get kids to do that, but, again, it's kind of the same thing. You can't get them to necessarily come to school. You can't get them to necessarily log in on a district device. So I think after what Ms. Prosnick said, I'm just going to leave it at that one for me, and we're just going to see, what everybody else says.
I would disagree on the 3.1.1. I think it's very important. 3.1.1, 2, and 3. I think Dr. Rapp and her amazing staff provide wonderful, thought-out recommendations to us, and the board definitely does vote on it, but it must come from well-thought-out staff information first. And long-term health of the district, I think fund balance is absolutely critically key for us, although I have been just recently today reminded that I am a lame duck by some people. But I do think, as an outgoing trustee, that long-term health of the district is incredibly important to me as I leave. Incredibly important, because I love this district. So those are highly important to me. I also think 4.2, 0.1, and 0.2, trying to make sure that staff turnover is low, is a really, really key indicator, especially for this market right now. So I think those are great indicators to include.
I agree with Ms. Haslett, and I think Dr. Bonner started it with 3.1, 0.2, and 0.3. I think you don't really have a discussion in the area of resource stewardship without those 3 things. I also will agree that though we set policy, we do so based on the work of the staff and allowing them to manage certain things day to day so that we end up where we need to be as it relates to the board policy. And so I think those are very important, I believe, to keep there and also to include in the evaluation. I would say with the rest, I didn't care about, not that I don't care, but the logging in of district devices. Some of the things that I was fine with not including, but I do believe if we're talking about, again, resource stewardship, we've already covered the financial piece in those first three metrics. And then anything really around retention and recruitment would be things that I would like to see, including a survey of the teachers here, because again, it's about managing all of our resources, not just money, but our teachers as well.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. So I'm going to agree with some, disagree with others, but I think go along with Ms. Prosnick's point. And Christy, you're not a lame duck, just a duck. It's not lame. Was I the one who reminded you of that? Or, oh, Dr. Bach.
I believe I'm the guilty party, and we can talk later, Ms. Hassel.
Yeah, so it's his fault. You know, what I would say is that while I appreciate all the kind of financial focus, I think of this board and one that just recently left, I think everybody with equal vigor has focused on financial responsibility. Nobody has a kind of a share of that's disproportionate. What I would say is that often there's a point of view on what resource stewardship means. And I think Sheila just talked about teachers. We do the surveys for teachers. We should do that. I think a lot of these things in here are leading indicators. You should track them. I honestly wouldn't have thought about it when it got brought up, streamlined or increased students logging into district devices. Quite frankly, if a student hasn't logged in for 3 months, I don't understand why we haven't gotten their device back. That's resource stewardship. That tells you they're not using the device. It would also be a very interesting leading indicator for the board relative to future decisions on assets. However, I'm going to probably differ, probably more in line with Ms. Sells. Fund balance is arbitrary. I'm just adamantly opposed to tracking things that are either mandated or arbitrary. Achieve the budget over 3 years. I'm telling you right now, as a lame duck, you're setting yourself up for failure. You will not get within 2% of a balanced budget. The reason is you can't control the legislature. Christy and I have done 9 budgets. Oh, sort of, 8.5. We used to budget in such a way that we had such an excess so that because we were told that we were penalized if we came in over budget. So we budgeted and we put $18 million in the fund balance. However, as everybody will recall from House Bill 3 and Chairman Huberty talking about ISDs need to spend their $9 billion in fund balance, ISDs essentially accrued this money over the years to be able to deal with years that we're in right now. So if you say, I'm going to do a budget within 1.5% over 3 years, you're not going to make it because you can't control the income side unless you somehow find some enrollment in WADA that is wildly crazy, or you find some reduction in expenses. So I would say just be careful of those things. They sound really good in the business world. It's a little bit different ballgame here, and it's different than other political subdivisions because other political subdivisions have the ability to find other sources of revenue through fees or through consumption taxes. We don't have the luxury of that, and so I would caution you against what you use as a tracking goal. I'm not saying that you don't have finance, build a budget, and you try to manage to it, but be careful that you hold the superintendent to it because there's a lot of things that on the income side the superintendent doesn't control. I think as it relates to the other part of it, the money and the people, I would just think, I'm all for Jenny's point of 3.4.1. I think that's one of your most important items in all of this outside of Section 4. What's not here is, I think, in looking at the kind of the aggregate level up here on the screen or in our report, is in thinking back of reading award-winning applications, right, for Teacher of the Year or whatever, I think we continue to struggle with how do people at a campus level articulate resource stewardship. In the business world, often you can articulate it, right? Hey, you manage your expenses. You don't overuse this or whatever. I think that somehow we've got to make sure that everybody collectively understands that. And one of the resources is, and I know it's not in here, and it could be partially my fault, is that our community are a set of resources, they're taxpayers. And, some people say, well, certain taxpayers are, underrepresented. I don't think anybody's underrepresented by us, but it's something to think about because they are a resource here for us going forward. So if we were to distill it down to one, I'd say 3.4.1.
Okay, on goal 5, community engagement, you'll see there's quite a bit of yellow still in here in this section. So we are still working through the metrics that would set these targets. Ms. Brim and Dr. Fitzy and I have been talking about those today, but still would like your feedback on which ones of these are resonating with you, even though it might be ones resonating with you that we don't yet have the targets for. And we will get those targets outlined before you see the scorecard again on Monday night, the 17th. Our goal is to, I think, Dr. Miller, get all of this back in for on Wednesday for Monday night, right? Yes, okay. All right, so goal 5.
I really like overall 5.1, which is to advance the message that promotes, protects, and champions LISD as the superior choice for families. I used to run around here and say something along the lines of Lewisville ISD is the premier pre-K through 12 school district in the state of Texas. I really still like that. So I'd really like 5.1.1 through 5.1.6. However, my colleague to the immediate left has disabused me of that notion kindly. So I'm going to stick with just merely half of those, 5.1.1, 5.1.2, because that's around communication, right? And then really I'm encouraged on increasing social media engagement, very measurable, and in the age we currently live in, significant and important. So that's mine.
I concur with Dr. Bonner. Mine are 5.11 because I was very strict with myself, and then 5.21. It's also because we had some baseline and some projection on those two items. I think that my question I would have about social media engagement is which social media, because it always changes, and it's changing right now. So I don't know what the next, TikTok is. I wish someone would tell me. I invest heavily and be a bazillionaire. That's where I kind of have some fuzziness on some of this, and I also know that this is not, filled in. So, ta-da.
Okay. I do believe that we have a focus on, we needed to have a focus on our staff, but I think, and I wonder sometimes if we're not missing a key component of this, because community engagement, really, I would like to shift that staff over into resource stewardship as far as employment. And because that's where I believe that this kind of stuff matters, whether they stay with us and their longevity and things like that, and would rather have some community engagement around our partners and the marketing we do and the communications we do with our outside community engagement. And that outside, and although our community is all of us, it's our students, our taxpayers, and all of that, I really feel like that when we originally brought in the cornerstones, that community engagement piece was really that
that very infancy of the partnerships and things that we grew to better our students. And so I think we're kind of forking in the road here if we bring it back in-house. And that's just my 2 cents. So.
I think the one that I like the best, and maybe it's because I get to read a couple of them a week, is the S'more newsletters. The reason why is, if this is community engagement, now granted, this is probably a little bit more, when you say campuses, it's probably a little bit more parent focused. However, I do believe it could be used more broadly. But, I love those if I get one of, I know, I'll just brag on my son's band director. I know that every Sunday night I'm going to get one of those s'mores, and I know where he's going to need to be, how much money I'm going to need to pay, all of the things, right? And what's going on. And it's simple, but it's really effective. I mean, it really does help you, okay, I know what's going on, And, I mean, hey, I think it could be used for lots of different things within, the community engagement realm. So that's my favorite.
My favorites were the first two, 5.1.1 and .2.
My favorites are 5.1.1. I do agree that maybe this is better covered somewhere else, but that communication needs to happen maybe in resource stewardship. I think Ms. Sells mentioned that. Definitely the parent communication. I will also agree with Ms. Sells on when I think community engagement, I also think about our corporate partners. I think about the various chambers and attendance at a lot of the community events and being involved there and getting feedback, because I think if we only seek to get feedback from teachers, students, and or staff, students, and parents, you're still missing a part of the community that they're not parents, but they are still stakeholders in our educational system. So I would just say that. Of course, agreeing with Ms. Lasan about the s'more, but that may be more of a parent thing, because it's very helpful, as a parent, to get those communications from school. Like she said, all the different things. I know that I'm going to get those emails about soccer and band and basketball. Let me just stop, because that's why I'm tired. But at any rate, I like those items.
Thank you. I think, I think what's the only thing that's really, all these things need to be done. What's missing is channel of choice. So what we've got here is two things. When we've got a lot of push communication going on, there's a little bit of taking the feedback and acting on it, but not sure how we're gathering that feedback, watching social media, whatever. So I'm not sure what the feedback means. I think if we're talking about engaging a broader set of community, build one LISD, a connected culture of community engagement and purposeful communications, I'm not sure where these items come together in one or two points to Ms. Prosnick's concern in representing a holistic view of how the community interacts with us. To the point, I mean, how does a chamber interact? How does someone that's an LEF contributor interact? How does LEF apply here? How do our community partners apply here? Love packs, those types of things. I just don't know if these goals capture the essence of engaging the community. It certainly, from a parent perspective, seems to be effective. It seems to be effective from a push notification where we have all the reports and that type of thing. And then we have people look at social media and then provide feedback to the superintendent. I'm just not sure. And then we do some surveys. I'm not sure that's all inclusive. And so I would look at a way to be more inclusive and look at kind of an omni-channel environment and say, because I think districts are ahead of us. I think districts have apps. I think they have a more common experience between the app and the website and maybe some of the other tools. that parents use. But if I was a business and I'm listening to this conversation, I don't know how I would engage with LISD. And I think that's something to think about.
All right, well, I'll give some final remarks. Just thank you so much for, all of the feedback over the whole entire many months of developing the long-range plan and just where things sit right now. So what I'm going to do is I'll aggregate this feedback and kind of the items that you all would select as your subset. We'll take additionally the feedback that we heard tonight about some of the indicators and that kind of thing and work on that as well. But having sat through many of these with Dr. Rogers as well, I hope that the scorecard helped. It definitely feels like it helped me get concise feedback from all of you specifically related to items, and so I'm excited about where we're headed just with this whole scorecard element and how we report out on progress. So thank you all so much and look forward to your adoption of the long-range plan on Monday night.
Because I want to be fully transparent, the side conversation that Dr. Bonner and I had was that in the safety section in Goal 2, that's all covered in Part 2 of your superintendent evaluation. And so the other thing I would say is there shouldn't be any duplication between Part 1 and Part 2 of the evaluation instrument. So if it's in Part 2, it either, do you know what I mean? It's either, it's not in. Does that make sense to everybody here? Because the idea behind the document was not to make it so, as I told Dr. Bonner, if I stood on it, I'd be 3 inches taller.
Okay, if there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:42 p.m.